Good morning, stockholders, board of directors, officers, and guests. I am Peter Perfecto, Vice President for Public Affairs. I will be your moderator for this morning. Welcome to PHINMA Corporation's Annual Shareholders Meeting. We would like to remind everyone that our 2021 Annual Report and our 2021 Information Statement have been made available for viewing and download at the website of the company. You may scan the QR codes flashed on the screen. You may also download by typing the URLs beneath the QR codes on your mobile devices. Please be advised that today's Annual Shareholders Meeting is being recorded, as required by the Securities and Exchange Commission. We will now begin PHINMA Corporation's Annual Shareholders Meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, the Philippine National Anthem. Let us all welcome Mr. Oscar J. Hilado, PHINMA Corporation's Chairman of the Board.
The annual meeting of stockholders will please come to order. Your corporation has decided to proceed with the conduct of this meeting remotely or via live streaming to avoid any health and safety risk on the part of our stockholders. This is the third stockholders meeting of its kind to be conducted by our corporation in accordance with the rules of the Securities and Exchange Commission. The following video will now introduce and acknowledge the members of the Board of Directors and the officers of PHINMA Corporation who are with us this time. Also with us in today's meeting are Mr. Antonio Lavinia of Stock Transfer Service Inc. and our auditors, SGV and Company, represented by Mr. Wilson Tan, Chairman, Ms. Vivian Ruiz, Vice Chairman, Mr. Martin Guantes, Ms. Meredith Miguel, Ms. Belinda Beng Hui, and Mr. Aaron Escartin. May we know from the Corporate Secretary whether notices of his annual meeting was sent to the stockholders?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The notice with the agenda of the meeting was posted on the website of the corporation and was published in the Philippine Daily Ink Philippine Star for 2 consecutive days on March 17 and 18, 2022, and was disclosed to the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Philippine Stock Exchange in accordance with the rules of the SEC.
Mr. Secretary, could you please inform our stockholders of the procedures for attendance, voting on each item of our agenda, and participation in today's meeting?
Mr. Chairman, as stated in the notice of this meeting, stockholders may participate and attend this meeting only by remote communication. Stockholders who have informed the company of their attendance through a dedicated email provided by the company in the said notice on or before April 8, 2022, shall be considered present at this meeting. The following rules of conduct and procedure, which are contained in the explanation on each item of the agenda posted on the website of the corporation and earlier disclosed, apply to this meeting. 1. Stockholders may cast their votes through a form named ballot proxy sent together with the information statement, which stockholders may submit on or before April 8, 2022 to the same dedicated email address. 2. All the items in the agenda for approval by the stockholders may be approved only by affirmative vote of the stockholders owning at least majority of the outstanding capital stock present or represented at the meeting, provided there is a quorum, except the election of directors. The election of directors will be based on the number of votes cast by the stockholders present or represented at the meeting for each or more nominees for election as directors as described in the information statement. Number 3, the votes received have been tabulated by the company's independent stock transfer agent, the Stock Transfer Service Inc. Number 4, each proposed resolution for approval by the stockholders will be shown on the screen, and the number of affirmative votes received for the approval of such resolution shall be reported by the corporate secretary. The votes received by each nominee for election as director will be reported by the corporate secretary. 5. Questions from stockholders have been received for the same dedicated email address. These will be answered during the meeting subject to appropriateness, relevancy, and time limits. The stockholders may also send questions or comments within 1 week after this meeting. In addition to the stockholders at this meeting, certain matters related to fiscal year 2020. These further disclosures were emailed to the stockholders attending this meeting before today, Mr. Chairman. Those are the rules and procedures for attendance and participation at this meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Secretary, do we have a quorum for this meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Based on the tabulation of attendance, there are present or duly represented at this meeting stockholders owning more than 79.14% of the issued and outstanding capital stock of the corporation, or 215,177,564 shares are present or duly represented at this meeting.
Legal notices having been given and a quorum being present, we are now ready to proceed with the meeting. The next item on the agenda is the reading and approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of the stockholders held on April 14, 2021. May I request the Secretary to discuss the resolution for approval with the stockholders and the votes received thereon.
Mr. Chairman, copies of the minutes were distributed to the stockholders as Annex D of the information statement. The proposed resolution to dispense with the reading of the minutes and for the approval thereof is shown on the screen. Based on the tabulation of votes, stockholders owning a total of 215,177,564 shares, or 100% of the shares present or represented at this meeting, voted in favor of the proposed resolution, Mr. Chairman.
Having received the affirmative votes of stockholders owning at least a majority of shares present at this meeting, the resolution is approved. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the annual report of management for the year ended December 2021. We shall now hear from our President and Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Ramon de Rosario Jr., and then from our Executive Vice President and Group Chief Finance Officer, Mr. Pith Brion.
Good morning, everyone. I am delighted to be here to celebrate the future of PHINMA Corporation, which has been in the business of making lives better for 65 years. Thank you all for joining us today. I want to start off by saying the past 2.5 years have been tough. The coronavirus pandemic has disrupted our lives in ways we never thought possible. Who would have imagined we would all be meeting virtually a few years ago? Even now, 2 years into this crisis, it is hard to wrap our heads around our present experience. It's even harder for the Philippines. Major news headlines are filled with great socioeconomic horrors. We are affected by global wars and climate dangers. We are facing economic imbalances that only exacerbate gaps and divides on the ground. National election results will affect the direction of our country for the next 6 years. This unrest is costing Filipino families their homes, their jobs, and their savings. Despite these challenges, I believe we are in a more hopeful place than we were 2 years ago. We have started to adapt to new ways of living and getting things done. We have suffered and struggled, but we have also learned so much and changed, hopefully for the better. We have learned to place great value in living the good, the simple, and the dignified life. I believe that is the defining story of our times. Not that we have experienced great sorrow and pain and loss, but that we have learned to get back and push forward. We carry with us remarkable lessons of individual resilience and collective growth. We are discovering new ways of healing and new approaches to sustainability and social impact. We are at the dawn of a mission-driven revolution for building a better normal where no one gets left behind. To do good while doing well, that is the call of our times. Every organization, especially the private sector, must be involved in this collective action of nation building. Gone are the days of mere profit generation and corporate competitiveness. Businesses are now called on to provide products and services with the prime motive of creating and uplifting social well-being. We in the PHINMA Group take pride in our efforts to measure our annual performance based on the impact we make on society and the citizenry. We take our mission seriously and intentionally. Through our businesses in construction, education, property, and hospitality management, we seek to empower Filipino families so that they can achieve the essentials of a dignified life. Our investments have always been targeted towards resolving the great inequities in these social development spaces. During the last 2 years of this pandemic, the PHINMA Group has become even more determined to pursue its mission of making lives better. The company has successfully achieved major milestones, operating from a 3-tier bottom line perspective, benefiting people, planet, and profit. We have expanded the scale and depth of our investments so that each measured step makes a huge difference to people with the most urgent needs. Our education group, led by PHINMA Education Holdings, Inc., acquired its 10th tertiary education institution and significantly exceeded its pre-pandemic performance with record-breaking enrollments for school year 2021-2022. This is great news, as we have been able to improve access to education and learning for as many underserved youths as possible. When we give young people the tools and skill sets they need to achieve their dreams and aspirations, it not only makes their lives better, it makes the entire nation better, because we are contributing to greater equity and prosperity for all. Our construction materials group, comprised of Union Galvas Steel Corporation, Phil Cement Corporation, and PHINMA Solar Energy Corporation, fulfilled its mission of boosting the nation's infrastructure development in 2021. We have been able to maintain our bottom line through strategic partnerships, operational efficiencies, and margin optimization initiatives, proving the company's agility to transform the supply chain amidst this unprecedented, challenging environment. Our property group, PHINMA Property Holdings Corporation, has continued to build and provide more affordable housing for Filipino families. We have always envisioned a nation of strong, livable, and sustainable communities that keep familiar relationships close and warm while creating a tangible path towards self-sufficiency. Meanwhile, our hospitality group, operating under Coral Way City Hotel Corporation, sustained occupancy and positive cash generation through quarantine bookings. We are optimistic that the tourism and hospitality industries are bound to bounce back better as lockdowns continue to ease globally. Over the next 5 years and so, we have laid out strategic plans to sustain our forward momentum. We will reinforce PHINMA's position at the forefront of moving private capital towards social impact. Our businesses are directly contributing to progress and sustainability. We are excited to execute and distribute these breakthroughs so they continue to reach underserved families and communities. This year is a pivotal moment for our company. We are focusing our energies on building and protecting the company's brand and reputation in the service of impact. We seek to ensure the alignment and execution of our mission across all our investments and business units. Making lives better is the rallying cry that directs all our actions. We are also happy to announce that we are welcoming a new set of leaders at PHINMA. They are the next generation of change makers that will galvanize the company mission and realize amazing new possibilities that will lead us to even greater heights in our mission to make lives better. At this point, it is appropriate for us to give tribute to Mr. Oscar J. Hilado, who has advised us of his desire to step down as chair of PHINMA Corporation at the end of today's meeting. Mr. Hilado has generously shared his unlimited wisdom and guidance with our board as chair for many years, and we thank him profusely. Fortunately, he has agreed to stay on the board and assume the appropriately eminent role of Chairman Emeritus. Mr. Hidalgo, you have our most profound gratitude. Our outlook is positive, and so are our values, our capacities, our strategies, and our willingness to invest in the future. We envision a world where every child succeeds in school and has opportunities waiting, where every family lives in a good home, and where every Filipino has a strong chance of achieving the stable and dignified life they deserve. But we know we cannot do it all single-handedly. No one organization can make a difference in our developing nation unless they have willing partners working alongside them, delivering services, sharing resources, building the economy, and pioneering the breakthroughs this country needs. Filipino communities need our support, and we count on all of you to create with us a collective blueprint to help people have the resources they need to get to the good life. I firmly believe that if we work together, we can achieve so much. There are so many extraordinary things that are possible to achieve even in just 5 to 10 years. With the passion, expertise, and resources of the people in this room and in this meeting, we can fulfill our shared goal of improving the well-being of people in our nation. We can erase the divide between those who suffer and have little and those who enjoy the good and prosperous life. Achieving equity is not just an aspiration. Making lives better for everyone is not just a company mission, it is a business imperative. The PHINMA Group has always been serious about this, and we enjoin you to join the pack. We are all part of building the post-pandemic future. We have the capacity to affect change and do better. Let's all get to work. As I end, we'd like to take this opportunity to show you the work we've been doing in the past year. Our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Pith Brion, will then wrap and share with you 2021's impressive financial results. I am confident that these will inspire us all to keep going. Thank you all for your work and your advocacy. It's a great honor to speak to all of you today. A pleasant morning to all. Thank you.
Fellow shareholders, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to present to you the highlights of our company's audited financial statements for calendar year 2021. Consolidated revenue of our company stood at 16 billion pesos, 30% higher than calendar year 2020, on the back of a 76% jump in revenues of the education business and a 20% gain in revenues of the construction materials business. Consolidated EBITDA amounted to 3.2 billion pesos, 88% higher than 2020, while consolidated operating income registered at 2.3 billion pesos, or 77% higher than 2020. Consolidated net income reached a 17-year high of 1.8 billion pesos, of which 1.12 billion is attributable to PHINMA Corp shareholders. Share in the attributable income is divided largely between the two key business units, from the education group in the amount of 563.3 million pesos and from the construction materials group 613.8 million pesos. I wish to highlight further that the growth in revenues and net income has been rising for the past 4 years, including the pandemic years of 2020 and 2021. Revenues grew at a 3-year compounded annual growth rate of 17.3%, while consolidated net income grew at a 3-year compounded annual growth rate of 132%. Our financial position remains strong. Total assets continue to grow, ending 2021 at 30.1 billion pesos, up from 24.5 billion in 2020. Significant increase in assets came from the growth in working capital assets of 1.8 billion pesos, increase in the property, plant, and equipment of 1.1 billion pesos with the completion of the Mariveles terminal port facilities, and the completion of payment on the $50 million investment in Songlam Cement. Songlam Cement is the biggest privately owned cement company in Vietnam. We maintained a reasonably strong liquidity position. Consolidated cash and near cash remained at about 5 billion pesos. We reduced our interest-bearing notes payable and trust receipts payable by a total of 714.3 million pesos and replaced this with long-term loans. We bolstered our capital position by issuing 3 billion in 3-year bonds. This marks the re-entry of PHINMA Corp to the domestic capital markets after more than 25 years of absence. The issue was oversubscribed by over 9 times. At the end of 2021, current ratio stood at 1.71, better than the 1.53 level in 2020. Consolidated DE bumped up to 2.03, up slightly from 1.86 in 2020. Total capital expenditure for the past 4 years amounted to 5.9 billion pesos in aggregate for both the education and construction materials businesses. Free cash flow in 2021 came to 65 million after posting a surplus of 1.48 billion in 2020. Finally, let me point out the earnings attributable to shareholders. The 2021 net income yielded earnings per share of 4 pesos and 12 centavos per share, an increase of 6.5 times over 2020. The return on average equity stood at 16% in 2021. The equity market has started to recognize the significant performance of our company. Share prices have moved up to close to 20 pesos and 15 centavos at the end of December 2021. At this level, the market values are stuck at 4.9 times price earnings multiple and at 27% below book value. These measures indicate room for better appreciation of your company's stock performance going forward. A special dividend of 10 centavos per share was declared in addition to the regular dividends of 40 centavos per share for shareholders of record as of March 22, 2022. Cash dividends were paid last April 6. The total dividend of 50 centavos per share is equivalent to about 2.5% yield at 2021 closing price. Dividends have been consistently paid for the last 14 years. Those are the financial highlights for the year 2021. Thank you.
May I ask our moderator to inform the stockholders of the questions received from the stockholders which are relevant to today's meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The following questions were received from the stockholders in advance of the meeting. First question. Considering the record-breaking enrollment figures attained last year, what acquisition and expansion plans does PHINMA Education have to further drive growth? Our Pehi will take this question, and we request Mr. Hapitan to respond.
Thank you. Good morning. It's important to break down the question into component market segments: Philippines, Indonesia, and within the Philippines, the older schools and the newer network schools. For older schools in the Philippines, the goal is to increase market share by focusing on programs that are performing well, but for which we are not yet well known. So we still have significant market share to gain. For newer network schools in the Philippines, we need to continue to raise our profile and to better understand the nuances of a more urbanized market. But due to the higher population density in these areas, we expect the growth to be accelerated. And this shapes our plans for acquisition. We prioritize buying more schools in Metro Manila and Laguna, and potentially establish similar networks in more urbanized areas. And then international growth, Indonesia, which is 2.5 times the population of the Philippines. Our goal is to establish our systems and modify them quickly according to what we're learning on the ground. That's why we're sending our best and most experienced leaders there to continue to add more programs and facilities in Karawang, east of Jakarta, and then potentially buy new schools in Surabaya, which is in eastern Java, and in Tangerang, which is west of Jakarta. To end, in view of the cyclic nature of enrollment, we need to not only identify the various drivers of growth, but we also need to sequence them deliberately, so that as existing markets become more saturated or as program preferences of students change, we have clearly identified the next sets of markets, schools, and programs that will drive growth into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hapitan. You guys truly make us all happy. Our second question, how is the construction materials group dealing with the rising pressures, especially in energy and freight? Mr. Ed Sahagon of the Construction Management Group will handle this question. Mr. Ed? Mr. Ed, you're muted.
Can you hear me, Pete?
That's it, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So before I answer that question, maybe I'd like to preface the answer by saying that for the last 65 years, this kind of crisis is not like the first time that the group has actually experienced it. Within our 65 years of existence, we've gone too many crises. And it's important to make sure that people that actually are the one that are managing the company are experienced enough to know the business itself. So for the construction material group, I believe that the track record would show that we know the business from the beginning. For the steel industry, for example, we have 56 years in the industry. And considering that we don't have an integrated steel industry in the country, most of these price increases, we will have an ability to pass it on. Recently, I think when we see the prices of steel in the country, before the crisis, it was like 36 pesos per kilo. Today, it's actually 60 pesos per kilo. So I think the steel industry managed to pass on at least 90% of these increases to their customer. On the cement industry, also looking at coal prices today around $300, even integrated manufacturer would have at least 60 pesos or 40 pesos increase on their energy prices. So with that, we also think that they can pass on at least 60 to 70% of these price increases to their customer. Recently, though, cement prices has gone up as much as 20, 25 pesos in the market. That shows that these price increases will eventually be absorbed in the market. I also would like to say that these three companies together in the construction material group, they're just because it's an accident, but the synergy that actually it brings to that each and every companies that belong to the CMG. For example, the cement industry brings in informations to the steel roofing industry that we have, and the steel roofing industry also brings informations necessary for us to take advantage in the solar roofing industry. So at least I hope that I've answered the question on how we're handling the current crisis on this unprecedented price increases on energy and also the shipping costs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Our experience truly makes a difference. Our third question, what factors drove PHINMA Properties' shift towards horizontal projects outside Metro Manila? And how do you expect this to impact performance? We request Mr. Pete Felix of PPHC to take this question.
Good morning, shareholders. The drive of PHINMA Properties to go regional was really driven by the expansion in the regions, particularly in emerging cities and next wave cities. Now, by doing that, we will be able to find more abundant sources of land, which is becoming a huge problem here in the National Capital Region. Apart from that, we feel that the underserved market in the regions will particularly lend itself well to our revenue generation. And perhaps the third item is that because of the cash conversion cycle, we will be able to improve that, thus because we don't have to build all the units that are unsold, unlike when we were strictly in condominiums. Now, with a more diverse product portfolio in horizontal projects, we build only what we sell, and because we build only what we sell, that will free up more capital so that it can expand our project portfolios faster. Maybe lastly, while it was not really the reason for doing so, we want to kick up our sustainability efforts into green architecture to a new level. No? So by going regional, we feel that we have more of a play rather than in a tight national capital region. So that's really what prompted our move to go regional and particularly into horizontal housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Felix. Building sustainable communities really is something that corporations like ours have to get into. Finally, our fourth question. How do you view tourism recovery in the country? And when do you think will it get back to normal? Mr. Mari Del Rosario will take this question on behalf of the hospitality group. Sir?
We are already seeing the signs of tourism recovery. If we stay the course, we feel that by the last quarter of 2023, we may be approaching the pre-pandemic numbers. This will be driven primarily by domestic travelers, both leisure and business, and by the returning overseas Filipinos. However, Foreigners' numbers coming into the country will depend on the airline flights capacity and the resumption of these routes. With the new administration in place, we are confident that the image of the country will be more positive. Therefore, we will see more tourists coming in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mari. Indeed, it will be a happy 2023 with your projections. So, Mr. Chairman, that is all the time we have for questions, and so it's back to you, sir.
Can the corporate secretary present the resolution proposed for approval by the stockholders and the votes received for the approval thereof?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The resolution for the approval by the stockholders of the annual report, together with the audited financial statements and the notes thereto of the corporation for the year ended December 31, 2021, is shown on the screen. Based on the tabulation of votes, stockholders owning a total of 215,177,564 shares, or 100% of shares present or represented at this meeting, voted in favor of the proposed resolution, Mr. Chairman.
Having received the affirmative votes of stockholders owning at least a majority of shares present at this meeting, the resolution is approved. The next item on the agenda is the ratification and approval of all the acts of the Board of Directors, committees, and management since the last Annual Shareholders Meeting. May I request the Corporate Secretary to present the resolution proposed for approval by the stockholders and the votes received for the approval thereof?
Mr. Chairman, the resolution for the approval and ratification of the stockholders of all acts of the Board of Directors, Executive Committee, and other committees of the Board, the officers, and the management is shown on the screen. And again, based on the tabulation of votes, stockholders owning a total of 215,177,567 shares, or 100% of shares present or represented at this meeting, voted in favor of the proposed resolution.
Having received the affirmative votes of stockholders owning at least the majority of shares present at this meeting, the resolution is approved. The next item on the agenda is the election of directors for the ensuing year. May I request the Corporate Secretary to inform the stockholders of the nominees for election as directors of the corporation and the votes received by the said committees.
Mr. Chairman, the Corporate Governance and Nominations Committee has pre-screened and shortlisted the nominees qualified to be elected as directors for the ensuing year. There are 11 nominees to fill 11 seats in the board as follows. 1, Mr. Oscar J. Hilado. 2, Mr. Ramon R. Del Rosario, Jr. 3, Dr. Magdaleno B. Albarracin, Jr. 4, Ambassador Jose L. Cuisha, Jr. 5, Mr. Victor J. Del Rosario. 6, Dr. Chito B. Salazar. 7, Mr. Eduardo A. Sahagun. And as independent directors, number 8, Attorney Lilia B. De Lima. 9, Ms. Rizalina G. Mantaring. 11, Mr. Edgar Ochoa. 10, Mr. Edgar Ochoa. And 11, Mr. Juan B. Santos. Now, considering that only 11 were nominated to fill 11 seats in the board, and there being no objection to the distribution of the said votes, a total of 215,177,564 votes were cast for each of the nominees, equivalent to 100% of the total outstanding shares of the corporation. The said nominees are therefore duly elected as members of the Board of Directors for the ensuing year and until their successors are duly elected and qualified.
May I congratulate my co-nominees, all of whom are current members of your company's board. Allow me and our Chief Executive, Ramon Del Rosario Jr., to thank our Board of Directors for your consistent encouragement and support throughout this very challenging period. We now proceed to the next item on the agenda, the appointment of the corporation's external auditor for the ensuing fiscal year. The audit committee and the board have selected and recommended the appointment of Sisip Gores, Velayo and Company as external auditors of the corporation. May I request the corporate secretary to present the resolution for approval and the votes received with the same.
Mr. Chairman, the resolution for the appointment of Sisip Gores, Velayo and Company as external auditor of the company is shown on the screen. And based on the tabulation of votes, stockholders owning a total again of 215,177,564 shares, or 100% of shares present or represented at this meeting, voted in favor of the proposed resolution.
Having received the affirmative votes of stockholders owning at least majority of shares present at this meeting, the resolution is approved and SGV is appointed as external auditors of the company for 2022. Before we adjourn, fellow shareholders, I would like to inform you that you may still email your questions or comments within 1 week from today. The company will answer all questions relevant to today's meeting and the matters taken up. Now, as I bring this shareholders meeting to a close, I wish to announce that today I am stepping down as chairman. When your company's founder, Ambassador Ramon V. Del Rosario, asked me to serve as chairman of PHINMA 19 years ago, he asked of me only one thing: take care of my company, Oscar. As his lifelong soldier, I did what I could and saw the company through its toughest, most trying periods and its best years. As General MacArthur once said, old soldiers never die, they just fade away. And I am an old soldier now. It is time to fade away. I am fortunate to do that when the company has just completed its best year ever, for which I must thank this army of fantastic team players that makes up PHINMA Corp's workers. My co-workers that gifted me with this great farewell gift, the most impressive year in the midst of the global challenge of COVID-19. What a privilege to work with this team. I cannot thank Ramon enough, RRR, to all of us here, for leading this team as CEO in their quest to make life better. A mission that he had set on the day that he assumed my position as CEO. I must not let this day pass without a heap full of praise and thanks to my ageless co-warrior, Dr. Magdaleno Albarazan, known simply as Mag, for always thinking forward, for using his incomparable knowledge of history to look always to the future, and forever challenging us all to look ahead, never letting his years dim his vision. I thank you, Mag, for being honest to a fault, not only in money, but for being so intellectually honest, expressing your views with fearless candor, yet always with great respect. I thank our tireless and honest co-workers, working as teams headed by their SBU heads, for living the mission of making lives better. Teams under Chito Salazar and Ed Zagon, whose companies have shown remarkable results, as the CEO described earlier, as well as Felix meeting the competition head-on in a difficult market, and Mari Del Rosario coping with the pandemic in the hospitality business. And I thank our treasury group under Keith Brion and Ruby Alvarez for skillfully and quietly managing the funding requirements of our companies during these exciting years. And lastly, I take this a unique opportunity to thank this splendid group of people that make up your board of directors for their incalculable help in guiding our company with the wisdom and judgment through the difficult journey that we all have been through. It has been a real pleasure and privilege to have been a member of this group. Thank you all for all your selfless help to the management of PHINMA. I now fade away, comfortable in the thought that the ship is going to be in the best of hands. At the organizational meeting of the board that follows the shareholders meeting today, I shall recommend to the board the election of your chief executive officer as concurrently chairman of the board. You cannot wish for a more honest, more competent captain of the ship as Ramon Del Rosario Jr. As I turn this title over to him, it shall be my turn to tell him what his father said to me 19 years ago. Take care of RVR's company, Ramon. Take good care of PHINMA. Ladies and gentlemen, I hereby declare this meeting as adjourned. Thank you very much.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I hope you don't mind my going off script, but I think we should not allow the meeting to end without me expressing on behalf of everyone here our deepest gratitude to you for your very generous words for all of us. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. You will always be Mr. Chairman to us. And I also wish to express the gratitude of the entire PHINMA organization for your many years of guidance, your great wisdom, and your sharing of your vast experience with us throughout the years. I am also pleased to announce to the board that we are conferring on Mr. Ilado the appropriately eminent title of Chairman Emeritus, and he will remain on our board and he will remain chairman of the executive committee. So we will have the full benefit of his continued guidance. There is just a slight switch in title, but he will be with us more than just in spirit, but in reality and in for all the values that he can impart with us. So we are very, very pleased. But let me also end by thanking this board, the boards of our various corporations, for your great assistance in helping us achieve what we have been able to achieve. The best is still to come. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Ilado.
Mr. Chairman, may I propose a resolution acknowledging the contribution of our outgoing chairman?
Absolutely. By unanimous vote, I'm sure we will.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Oscar J. Ilado. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now you may adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you again for joining PHINMA Corporation's Annual Stockholders Meeting. For more updates on the PHINMA Group and its business units, follow our official social media pages through the QR codes flashed on the screen now. Have a pleasant day ahead, everyone. Again, the officers, board members are requested to transfer to the meeting, to the organizational meeting in another link. Thank you.